Happy Tuesday, everybody. So this is the first community event. What I've been wanting to do is kind of do some community deck building. So whether or not this is just showcasing your build, I'm going to give you my thoughts on the build and some suggestions. And feel free to, the idea here is, to stimulate conversation around the deck. So if you have any ideas about what you would think would help improve, please leave a comment below. Would greatly appreciate that. And so this one was by Clorono Moss Robot 255. Maybe I butchered your name, maybe not. And so the deck is kind of a mash between mono red prowess and mono black skeletons. And so we have the core of mono black skeletons, the Cult Conscript, the Forsaken Miner, and the Corpses of the Lost. And then we have Cut Down and Bitter Triumph. And then we have the mono red prowess, which is Slick Shot Show Off with the Kumano Faces Kakazan and Swift Spears, and then Play with Fire and Lightning Strike. So the deck is going to need a turn 1 red source for like playing Kumano Faces Kakazan, as well as a turn 1 black source for playing Cult Conscript or Forsaken Miner. And so it was good to see that you do have enough of the red sources, right? So you need 14 sources at least for each color, and this one is running 16. One thing to be said, though, about the lands is that this is running 24 lands right now, and with a curve like this, you don't need that many lands because it does top off at the Corpses of the Lost. So I think you could get away with running fewer lands. In best of 3, I think with this curve, I would run 21 lands, and then in best of 1, you could get away with even less. If you look at like the mono red prowess build, a lot of times we'll be flirting around with 17 or 18 lands because of how arena mulligans. So in best of 1. So what I would suggest doing is cut the 2 Restless Vents, which is the Rakdos Manland that enters the battlefield tapped, as well as the 2 Sandstorm Verges, since you don't really have any of the crime payoffs. There's a little bit, right? But you've got the removal to trigger the crime. But I don't think we need the repeatable crime outlet of Sandstorm Verge. And both of these aren't helping with the turn 1 plays of your black and red spells. So I would cut this down to 20, see how it goes. You might want to bring it back up to 21. May even want to go less than 20. Kind of have to feel it out. The other thing too is that you could play around with adding Go for the Throat instead of Bitter Triumph. It doesn't hit Planeswalkers, but then you also don't have to discard a card or pay 3 life to cast it, and still give you that instant speed interaction, which would be really very useful for the mirror match against Mono Red Prowess, where bringing in the additional interaction is going to give you an advantage. Now, you're not running any Dig, you're not running any Reckless Impulses, you're not running any of the Fugitive Codebreakers. So where you're going to kind of win the match is through your black interaction instant speed removal. And so I think what I would do is I would just up all of the interactions at 3. I would just make them 4 for the 4 lands. I'd just up the Cut Down, the play with Fire, the Lightning Strike, and the Go for the Throat or the Bitter Triumph. And as far as rotation goes, this looks pretty good because the Play with Fires can be replaced with Shocks. The Takonuma and the Sokenzan can be replaced with just basic Swamp and Mountains. And then Kumano Faces Kakazan is going to go away, and this one's a little bit harder to find a replacement for. But I do think that you could just throw in the Fugitive Codebreaker, which is the 2/1 Prowess that would kind of fit into the mono red kind of theme, the Prowess theme that's already going on with the deck. So I hope you find that feedback helpful, and thank you for sharing your deck. And to those who are wanting to share theirs, what I'm going to be doing is every Tuesday, so when this video comes out, I will be posting a link in the community tab where you can submit your decks. The second submission here was Tony Elf 2's I called this one Gruel Ramp. So if you go all the way back to week 4 of Outlaws of Thunder Junction and you look at my meta review, we talked about a Gruel Ramp archetype by Zelesnia that took down 2nd place in one of the standard challenges on Magic the Gathering Online. It was in best of 3. And so this feels like a similar build, but has been adapted to be better in the best of 1 meta. And so we've dropped the kind of some of the ramps, right? So we've dropped 1 copy of the Smuggler's Surprise, we've dropped the 4 copies of the Glimpse of the Core, the 3 copies of the Brotherhood's End, which would be a way to keep this in just a 2-color space if you wanted to, would be to use the cheap red sweeper. Then we've got Map the Frontier has been cut and gone down 1 Terror of Peaks, as well as down 1 Calamity Galloping Inferno, which is really the win condition of the deck. You're trying to saddle Calamity with the Terror of Peaks and do like a 1-turn kill. And also dropping the Spinewoods Paladin and the Atali Primal Conqueror and 1 Trumpeting Carnosaur from the top end. And bringing in white, so we get the Get Lost and the Lightning Helix, which is going to dramatically improve the interactions, or the matchup against Mono Red Prowess. And I like this tweak because in Best of 3, you don't have to worry about that deck, but in Best of 1, it is very relevant. And then because we're bringing in the white, we can run the Temporary Lockdown as opposed to the Brotherhood's End. And I wonder a little bit about that, of whether or not, have you tried it with the Brotherhood's End and keeping it mostly Gruul so you can kind of have less white sources? Just something to think about. I haven't really played around with Temporary Lockdown versus Brotherhood's End. But the other thing too is upping the Outcaster Trailblazer, because we don't have the ramp. Instead what we're doing is we do still have the Topiary Stomper for ramp, but we have a lot less of the ramp that we saw in the Best of 3 list by Zelesnya, and so we have 28 lands instead of 24, and increasing the Trailblazer to give us some more card draw to get into our land drops, and bringing in the 2 Railway Brawlers. And so this was a new addition that I thought was kind of interesting by Tony Elf. And I'm not sure it's necessary for the Terror of Peaks Calamity combo, but I've definitely seen the Railway Brawler being explored in a lot of the plot space, so it kind of makes sense. And I don't have a whole lot to... I think this deck is really well designed and really well adapted from what we saw earlier in Week 4, now in Week 11. Thank you for sharing this, Tony Elf, but I don't really have much to say other than the deck looks fun, looks good, looks ready for the Best of 1 space, and it kind of makes sense to be running the no Cavern of Souls, because we are running in the white instances that would be more difficult to cast with it. So yeah, thank you for sharing. And the third deck here that was submitted was by Grey Goose 87, and this one was really an exploration for how are we going to play Psychic Frog in Historic on Arena. And I haven't played a lot of Historic. I've definitely dabbled from many years ago, but so Historic is basically like Modern Light. It's very similar to Modern. The meta in Modern is usually reflected in the Historic meta in Magic the Gathering or Arena, because there are some cards that are in Modern that you won't find on Arena. And but so Modern's a decent space, and this deck seems largely built off of the deck that we saw built for Historic by Ash Lizzle and around the Psychic Frog, and is originally adapted off of the Dimir Dredge space. So and bringing in the Evolution Witness, which is the creator's Grey Goose's addition to bring back the Psychic Frog over the Chthonian Nightmare. So Ash Lizzles, I believe, was using this one as a way to kind of dredge and then get back the Psychic Frog from your graveyard. Satoru is also another one that I saw with Ash Lizzle that was being run. I don't remember the Agatha's Soul Cauldron with the Evolutionary Witness, but talking to Grey Goose, it was kind of playing around with the idea of getting like Insidious Roots maybe to pop off with an infinite loop. And one of the issues that you're going to run into is that like it might be hard to protect your Evolution Witness, and the 3-color space is going to be a lot harder. I did notice that you didn't have the Watery Grave or the Overgrown Tomb, so if you're going to play in Historic, the Shock lands are definitely worth crafting to really help, especially in a 3-color space. I did bump into some Sultai, so black, green, blue dredge decks from days gone by, and really they were just doing the dredge space and bringing in the Grizzly Salvage. So you could look up some of those lists, or I can send them to you, and instead of the Grizzly Salvage you could just try running the Insidious Roots, and might give you a a good idea of where to go. And the other fixer that you could bring in or contemplate that I've seen in Sultite dredge lists are mana confluence, and so that could be a consideration to bring in. The other thing too is you had a couple of adaptations from Ash Lizzle's list, and I don't really feel comfortable taking another Magic the Gathering content creator's deck list and then showcasing it on my channel. So if you want to check it out, just Google Psychic Frog Historic, and like Ash Lizzle will be your first hit right on YouTube. Which has a similar build to this. Now, that being said, I want to talk a little bit about where the deck came from. So this was a list that I found that was claiming to be the #1 mythic on Arena in Historic for this season, and is also running the Psychic Frog, isn't going into the Sultai space, is sticking strictly to Dimir. But you see a couple of things that were cut from Ash Lizzle's list, and I think your list as well. I can't. Maybe it wasn't cut from Ash Lizzle's. Again, Historic is definitely not my strong suit. But the Silver's Moat Ghoul is included because it pairs really nicely with the Creeping Chill that was included. So that's one of those combos that you may want to consider adding back in. Wonder was a typical inclusion in a lot of the Dimir Dredge space, being able to give everything flying. I think this was already included, and the Founding of the Third Path was cut from Ash Lizzle's list and from your list as well as the Necromoeba, which was considered kind of like a staple within the deck. And the Bloodghasts were still in there. Glimpse, I think you cut down to 2, and then there was no Otherworldly Gaze or the Secret Keeper. So a little bit of this is for getting the self mill started, getting the dredge started. Has less of a way to bring back the Psychic Frog, though. So just something, I'm putting it here just to give you some options and some ideas, so you can take Ash Lizzle's list, and then you can take this Dimir Dredge list and kind of see what's in both, what's not in each, and then decide where to go. And again, if you want that Sultai list, if you're really set on doing the Insidious Roots Infinite Loop, hit me up. I'll definitely shoot you the Sultai list, and I think that's probably your best bet, is to take that approach. So I hope that's helpful, gives you some ideas. And if you would like to, again, submit a deck for review, so either just for showcasing and to get my thoughts on it, look over on the community tab. And thanks for being a part of my community. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you tomorrow, most likely, for a best of one gameplay video of some meta deck, I'm sure. So take care, everybody.